Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Hey, what's going on, Trey? What are you working on?
What's up, Wes? We got a new show. We're going to talk about a better mousetrap. So it's a shortened phrase, just like a lot of the phrases over time that have been shortened, but just have some fun with it.
Oh, that's cool. Speaking of phrases, have you ever heard Tony say one half does the other? What does that mean?
Yeah, so the real phrase is 6-1. So you call it six, the other person a half dozen to the other. So 6-1, half dozen to the other.
One person call it a half dozen, one person would call it six.
Tomato, tomato.
The way Tony says it, it doesn't really make any sense.
It makes zero sense.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement, and I am that little man in the sweater vest, retirement planning specialist and fiduciary, Tony Walker. And before we get into our meat of our show today on this, it's June 18th. That's right, June 18th, 2024. We always got to introduce America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander, helping produce the show, along with Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson. But in the studio today, over here at 8303 Shelbyville Road, is my favorite son-in-law and fellow fiduciary to talk about today's subject matter, and we gave you a hint of that in the introduction, and that's how to build or how to find a better mousetrap. Good morning, Trey.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome, and I appreciate you coming on board because this was kind of your show title, so you're going to have to help kind of walk through this. But I love the thought of it, and when you said, Tony, we ought to do this show, tell the audience how we got the idea actually from one of our clients.
Sure. So every time, if anybody's listening to the show, you always tell them to call or fill out the Let's Get Started on the website. That comes to me and you. It's not like it's some special thing that goes off into the ether and some random 1-800 number follows up with you. It's me or you typically calling them to reach out and talk about their situation. So a gentleman filled that form out. On there, he said that he's been handling his own finances, but he's always looking for a better mousetrap. And that was a light bulb moment. I said, okay, that's a show idea. So I'm to blame for pulling myself into this own one. But.
Yeah, that's right. You're always saying, can't you get West, Tony? But if you keep coming up with ideas, unfortunately, you got to follow through on them, Trey. So, yeah, and we laugh. We say laugh. We laugh. It's a good laugh. But our clients, these saver clients, I mean, they're a hoot. I mean, they come up with more funny sayings. You think I come up with some funny sayings, but I just enjoy doing business with these savers. Yep. They're hardworking people. A lot of them are manufacturing middle managers. Some of them have had a good run or whatever, but I just think they enjoy our laid-back style. They enjoy our sense of humor. They enjoy our process, obviously. We'll get into that in more detail. But what would you, now that you've been with me, how long?
7.5 years.
Okay. Yeah, how would you describe the typical client and why they are so enjoyable to work with and why you think they enjoy working with us?
Yeah, I think, like you said, they've worked so hard for this money, but they've kind of had a sense of humor in doing it. They know they've worked a hard job. They're entering this retirement, which for them probably 20 years ago felt like it might never happen. And now here we are that give them the green light to retire and roll that 401k over into a plan where they can see in that binder that they're not going to run out of money. All of a sudden, that's kind of this, I can be a little silly moment. And they try to use some of the sayings and terminology we use, and they might not say it 100% correctly, but that makes it even better because they're trying to understand everything.
Well, speaking of that, yeah, apparently I've been saying this one half does the other for years, and I just found out that was incorrect. So
yeah, so all these sayings, especially like today, a better mousetrap, everybody gets the concept of that. It's looking for a better opportunity. However, it's an Emerson quote that it's, if you can build a better mousetrap, the world will beat down your door. But
beat a path to your door.
So see, I'm messing up.
That's all right. You got
it. The one that you've said forever that Wes and I still laugh about is a half dozen the other, which doesn't make any sense without the context of the first half of
So
it.
go on and fill it in for me.
So if somebody says it's 6 to 1, half dozen to the other, that means it's the same thing either way you put it. But you leave out the 6 part, which makes no sense.
Okay, can I interject what Dick Walker would say? Go ahead, roll the tape.
Whatever.
But it's funny because a lot of these sayings that have become commonplace are actually shortened versions of longer quotes. And
we got to have some fun with this.
Yeah.
Well, you read them off. You read off 2 or 3 of these because actually this was very interesting.
So beauty is only skin deep. That's one that everybody knows. But the full term or full saying is beauty is only skin deep, but ugly goes clean to the bone.
I love that one. Keep going.
Rome wasn't built in a day. I know that's one a lot of people use all the time, but it's really Rome wasn't built in a day, but they were laying bricks every hour.
And I like the grass is always greener. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, grass is always green. Everybody knows that one. Most people do know that on the other side of the fence because that's one that people use. Actions speak louder than words, but not nearly as often, which is a good one. And then jack of all trades, that's one everybody uses. Then sometimes jack of all trades, master of none. The full quote is actually jack of all trades, master of none, though oftentimes better than master of one.
Interesting. Yeah, so there you go, folks. So now speaking of a lot of unfulfilled slogans, the financial world, man, we come up with our fair share of them. In fact, what's interesting is I'm seeing this more and more. My wife, who doesn't really keep up with money, she really doesn't care much about it. And there was an ad that came on the other day from a Wall Street firm. And I was watching it, and she was kind of watching it in general, and it said something about guaranteed income you could never outlive. I said, oh, look at there, Susan. She said, what? I said, that guaranteed income you could never outlive. And she said, what's the big deal? I said, the only thing that can do that is an annuity. And she's still like, okay, your point. I said, my point is 2 or 3 or even 5 years ago, that Wall Street firm would have never even inked into annuities. They can't say the word annuities because they've bashed them for so long. So that's the thing, folks. When you hear these things, guaranteed income for life, money you can never outlive, just know that we've been specializing in annuities for years. And if you hear those terms, they are going to be talking to you about annuities. Just an example. All right, let's get back on topic here, Trey. I know you've done some research on this. Later on in the show, I'm going to talk about 6 mousetraps that sometimes savers tend to gravitate to. Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes the mousetrap collapses on them. So you got to be careful out there searching for these mousetraps. But what have you found in your findings in terms of this idea?
Sure. So talking about these saver clients approaching retirement, recently retired, there's been this paradigm shift in the financial world towards retirement planning. Like you just mentioned, Wall Street's getting into the business of annuities, which 20 years ago they were bashing our clients that on phone calls with you trying to move money over into an annuity. Now they're selling them. So there's really 3 components in this shift towards retirement planning. A lot of them are obvious, but that's why you're seeing more and more of the banks and Wall Street getting into it. So number 1 is the demographic shift. We've used this stat a ton over the last couple of years, but every day there's 10,000 savers turning 65 in the United States.
Okay, let's stop there just for a minute. Every day, 10,000 people every day hit 65, i.e. retirement. Let's say that's the normal age that people think about it. So, yeah, what do you think the financial world is thinking out there?
Cha-ching, cha-ching. That's where follow the money.
So, folks, you may be wondering, why did all of a sudden I get a free dinner seminar invitation and why am I being invited to a university to listen to a course on retirement, or why are all of a sudden my stockbrokers and everybody talking about retirement planning? That's why, folks. They know there's money in those hills. Well, that would be their hills. Where did that? Research that later.
Yeah, we'll get on that.
Yeah, we'll find out what the full.
Put a note on that, Derek.
Yeah, Derek, work on that if you don't mind, son, in your spare time.
There's gold in them dire hills.
But yeah, so there's a lot of people out there now that are prospects, and they've got money. They know that, and as we mentioned, a lot of them are savers. They don't know what to do with these 401ks.
Yeah.
So you're going to be targeted, folks, to turn that money over to somebody, and it may be people that are really not that well trained in retirement planning. All right, what's number 2 there on your list?
Yeah, the second one you just hit on it. It's 401k. So the 401k, these baby boomer generation have these big 401ks, really in thanks to Wall Street, but we can blame Wall Street also because that in 1978 the 401k kind of came about, which, as we always say, the defined pension went the way of the dinosaur. So gone are the employer-provided pensions. However, that left savers to kind of go it alone with a 401k and Wall Street and save their own money for retirement. So now these boomers have these 401ks that they are now looking to plan for retirement.
And what I think a lot of them are now realizing, because they're starting to draw money out, they've forgotten that I know I studied under Bob Castellone. I love that guy. Man, he was good. But he always said the 401k is not a tax savings tool necessarily. All you're doing is postponing the tax. And we don't know what the tax is going to be until you take that money out and try to convert it into a dollar, and then you pay the tax. So as we've talked on this show many times, the problem is, number one, they don't understand the taxes, and number two, those taxes are uncertain. And again, I'm sure you've heard us talk about this, folks, but in 2025, at the end of 2025, these current laws expire. Most people, including myself with the deficits, believe the taxes will go up. So it's another fear in the mind of these savers who've never had to worry about taxes, really, right? You just work and employer deducts it. Now you get this large sum of money. It's your life savings. And not only do you have to worry about, can it last for the rest of my life, or what are the taxes going to be?
Yep. And that kind of lends itself to the final point. It's just uncertainty. It's volatility in the market. It's economic uncertainty. It's what are we going to do? We've saved this money. We don't want to see it vanish. How can I turn that over to a retirement planning specialist and not run out of money in retirement?
And there's many articles on this. I know you found one. I don't know if I have it handy. I've got a note on it that Forbes even came out with an article, and it was kind of an overview of why retirement planning is essential. And I think it was even called The Importance of Retirement Planning. So what did Forbes have to say about it?
Yeah. So, I mean, the summary of that is we're in this generation where the 401k is your retirement asset. A lot of folks are...
But it's not a plan, right?
It's not a plan. It's this pool of money that has yet to be taxed. You might have a little Social Security on the side. You're looking to supplement that to live on for the rest of your life. How can you lay that into a plan? And throwing it into an IRA and pulling out 4% is not a plan, because if that market's down 20% or up 5%, whatever it is, you're kind of throwing a dart at the wall on what you can live on for that year. So getting a plan together is what they're saying is so vital at this point in these retirees' lives.
So let me kind of summarize this before we take a break, folks. So the three things Trey mentioned: the demographic shift. Maybe that's you. If you're already retired or nearing retirement, we need to talk. Again, folks, we have over 3,000 clients. The majority of them are over the age of 60. We know this world very well. We've been working in retirement planning long before Wall Street and a lot of these folks even thought about doing retirement planning. Number two, know this: if you've got a 401k plan, you've got a tax tumor. You've got to deal with it. You can put it off as long as you want. It ain't going away. And the problem is, when you die, so do your kids get it now. They've got to deal with it. So let's get a plan to try to lower those taxes, and let's get that started right away. And then finally, market volatility. And as people know, we've got $260 million with Charles Schwab. We don't mind taking a little bit of risk, but folks, you got to dial that risk back. If you're a saver, retired or retiring soon, you cannot afford to go through another 08. Let's dial that back. Let's create some safety. Let's create what we call
sweep insurance,
and get this to a point where you can quit worrying about this money. To find out more about our services, just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that little Let's Get Started button. Trey mentioned that we will be happy to talk to you by phone, free of charge. It's called the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. Or if the internet's not your thing, you can call us anytime at 877-499-9255. All right, folks, hang in there. We'll be right back. Having worked in the retirement planning field for 40 years, I know it's not just about how much money you've saved for retirement, but making sure you one day don't run out of money. That's where mailbox money comes in.
mailbox money,
A reliable, lifelong income, much like the pension plans from the past. If you're interested in turning your 401k into mailbox money, let's talk. Just set up your free 10-minute phone call with myself at TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Up until the tragic events of 9/11, I was focused in my practice on what we call products. I thought there was a magic bullet out there. I would get annuities, mutual funds, whatever, and it was all about products, again, until they flew into those buildings and all these products kind of came crashing down. So what I decided to do after the events of 9/11 was to create a process. What I decided to do at that time was focus solely on retirement planning and solely on savers. And I knew that I could not depend solely on products but I had to have a process first, then get the products. So what we do in this process, it's a 5-step process, and it begins with clarifying your vision. And clarifying your vision means we sit down for that first appointment. We have something called a starter kit that I will personally go through with you to make sure I understand what you're trying to accomplish and your expectations of us should you decide to work with Tony Walker Financial. The next point, and this is a game changer, this is our proprietary software. This is where we assess your situation. This is where the money part comes in, and trying to understand how much money you will have to be worry-free in retirement based on your current assets. The third step, and this was really kind of a problem, we called it the commitment phase. That's when somebody says, all right, Tony, I'm ready to do business with Tony Walker Financial. We now have changed that over to what we call the onboarding phase, meaning that's when somebody elects to do business with us. We have people specializing within our staff that will come in, meet with you, make sure we have all the statements that you've got correct, what's going to move over, what's not, names of all your beneficiaries for family information. All of that's accurate before we move to the fourth step, which is called the implementation phase, which where the money then comes over to either Charles Schwab and or the different insurance companies we use for our annuities. We do all of that. We do all of the heavy lifting. Again, folks, this is why I have so much staff that can handle all of the business we create. The fifth step, this is called monitor your progress. This is how we make sure you're staying on track with the original game plan. Now, the reason I go into all this, these 5 steps, I've noticed over the years since creating this process, more and more financial advisors, institutions, if you look at their wording, this is all very similar. So while anybody can say they have a process, how do we maintain the assurance of our clients that we are handling things and keeping you on track? Well, it's this wonderful staff. For an independent retirement planning firm, I would argue that we have more service professionals than anybody in the country in terms of a ratio to advisors. So we have myself, Heather, Trey, and Wes. Those are the 4 advisors, fiduciaries. We're all on a salaried basis. We don't work on a commission basis. All of those commissions from insurance contracts go into the firm and are divvied up to take care of all of our overhead. You're not going to have to call these 1-800 numbers and deal with all these companies. You deal with a face that looks familiar and is assigned to help you with specific tasks as you need it. So this is the way to go, folks. If you're a saver and you feel like you're not getting the personal attention to detail you need, give us an opportunity to talk to you. I think you'll be very happy that you did. So we're going to use an example here of how does this process work at Tony Walker Financial when you're thinking about rolling over your 401k plan to us. And let's assume maybe you've met with other advisors, nice folks out there. They've talked about this process they have and how they're going to do things. Again, as we've mentioned before, many people are starting to duplicate or try to copy what we've been doing for years. So it's one thing to say you have a process. It's another thing to have the staff to be able to fulfill the commitments involved in having a process. So what happens here? So let's say you have a $300,000 401k. Well, before you invest it anywhere, hopefully somebody is clarifying your vision of what do you want to do with this money. Folks, I've been doing this a long time. In fact, I've met with nearly 20,000 savers, and I can quickly clarify what somebody's wanting to do with that money. That's first off. If you get this wrong, the process falls apart. So I would personally do that, or one of our trained fiduciaries would handle that first meeting. Now, the second meeting is what we call our assessment. What we do on that is I take that information from the first meeting, we put that into our income planning software. I would be personally meeting with our department. We have a lot of people in our income planning department. Lisa Allerkamp is in charge of that department. They're going to put that assessment together. Again, this is absolutely free. In fact, I had somebody come in the other day and said, Tony, I can't believe you're just giving all this to us. We had an advisor the other day that wanted to charge us $1,000 before they'd show us anything, which to me, that's not much of a leap of faith. We're going to give you this for free. Now, the third step, we used to call this the commitment phase. Now it's called onboarding. When somebody says, okay, Tony, I am ready to move over my 401k to your plan through Tony Walker Financial, what do we do next? Well, that's the beauty of that. In fact, we have people assigned to doing just that. Onboarding means that we're going to verify all the statements you have, whether they're IRAs, Roths, after tax, where these monies are located, fees to get out of them, make sure we have all the updated beneficiary information, correct names. There's a lot that goes into that, but that's called the onboarding step. Then, once we have everything accurately documented, we call this the implementation stage, and that's where our new business department, either through Charles Schwab or through our annuity new business department, they would come in to verify information, set up all the accounts, start moving all of the money either over to Charles Schwab or to the various annuities and life insurance contracts we might suggest. That's called the implementation. Now, here's where the process for most people breaks down. I think it's the most important step of all. It's monitor your progress. See, folks, retirement planning is just the beginning. You could have this plan for 30 or 40 years, one of you could be alive to do this. Plus, when you pass away, your kids are going to have to deal with this money and possibly the taxes of it. We have set up in place several employees whose only job is to monitor the progress. If something looks amiss for whatever reason, maybe there's been changes to somebody's retirement, one of the fiduciaries or even myself is going to get involved to make sure that you stay on track. So if you don't have a process like that, and mainly if you don't have a firm that has a large enough staff to keep up with your plan as you move through retirement, my question is, why not? Take advantage of meeting with me in person by phone. It's absolutely free. We call it the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. You can take advantage of this by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Just click on that Let's Get Started button or arrange that phone call by calling 877-499-9255. Who can you trust? It's one of the most important decisions you'll have to make. Question is, are you ready? Well, we're here to help at Tony Walker Financial. You know, we care more about you than we do your money, and we have over 2,000 happy clients and an A-plus rating with the Better Business Bureau to prove it. Rolling over a 401k, confused about Social Security, maybe you're afraid of running out of money. Learn how to use and enjoy and protect your hard-earned money. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and let's get started. When it comes to savers in search for a worry-free retirement and thinking there's a better mousetrap out there, I wanted to cover 6 of the most popular reasons we found that savers usually search for a better mousetrap. So let's start with reason number 1, and that is basically poor investment performance. So if a client's retirement portfolio consistently underperforms the market or does less than the client thinks it should have earned, or worse yet, the performance fails to meet the client's goals and spending objectives, then in many cases, the saver will seek another advisor who basically brags that they can outperform the market. So what happens when performance is down, of course, we tend to look to others for a better mousetrap, hoping they can outperform the market. Sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. All right, let's go to reason number 2, and that would be lack of communication and personal attention to detail. Folks, online calculators or one-pagers provided by an advisor, or worse yet, handing over your money to someone to manage it, never understanding what in the world they're charging in the way of fees, is a recipe for more worry. Again, as I like to say, those of us in the financial world are really not in the financial business, but first and foremost should be in the communication business. And if what we are communicating is way too difficult for you to understand, then again, you're going to create more worry, and it would be my advice to get a second opinion. The third reason someone might search for a better mousetrap is because of high fees and other costs associated with advisors who manage their money. The number 4 popular mousetrap, lack of trust and confidence. You know, we recently took on a new client who, after working for years with the same firm, before they retired, of course, realized that their advisor was not in the planning business at all, but appeared to be more in the selling business. As they described it, the advisor kept asking for more and more money while the poor old client just wanted a plan. In other words, the advisor kept pushing products, things like bonuses, things like higher rates of return, why the client hadn't moved all their money over, without ever delivering a process. You see, you've got to consider product true, but it's really the process that leads the show, not the product, which is why I created this 5-step process that not only our clients can follow along, but our well-trained staff can as well. Remember, folks, it's not about the products. It's first about having a process in place that you can understand and monitor all the way through retirement. Here's a mousetrap I bet you hadn't thought about. Your advisor basically getting out of the business for whatever reason. It's really interesting to note that many advisors will be retiring. Many advisors change firms. Unfortunately, some will die. And the question for you is, when this happens, not if, when this happens to your advisor, whenever it happens, what's going to happen to your money? Who's going to fill their shoes? And if they do fill their shoes, are they going to have the same philosophy, the same products? Is there a process in place? Probably not, which is why we have at Tony Walker Financial 3 highly trained fiduciaries who are salaried. Trained in what? They're trained in the worry-free retirement process. In fact, that's why we have this game plan software. So let's imagine something happens to Tony Walker. I'm no longer here. They will be able to handle your finances because we have the written game plan in place and because they're trained in the process. And finally, number 6, as my late great father used to always say, nothing stays the same. That's right, folks. I hate to tell you this, but your goals for the future will more than likely change at some point during retirement. I see this all the time as I meet on average. Remember, folks, I'm meeting people in the trenches. I meet on average 30 savers per week. I get to watch their lives play out. And the one thing I can tell you in retirement is this. At some point, things will change. You're eventually going to die. You're going to lose a spouse. Your health might take a turn for the worse. You might even have an adult child or a grandchild have to move in with you. You could be forced to help family members. And then one day, you're going to ultimately probably have to decide what to do about your housing, whether it's downsizing, assisted living, or possibly even going into a nursing home. All of these issues create change. Nothing will stay the same, and that's why you need a retirement planning firm with more than 20 years of experience in working with over 5,000 written game plans. Folks, we know what we're doing at Tony Walker Financial. And if that's you right now, if you say, man, I'm tired of looking for all these better mousetraps, I just want to work with somebody I can trust, meet in person, and knows what the heck we're doing. To get started, all you do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Click on that Let's Get Started button, or you can call us 24/7 at 877-499-9255. Looking to roll over your 401k? Then log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and learn just how easy it is to roll over and safeguard your 401k. Do it today.
So when I first started working with Tony Walker, Tony originally hired me for tax research primarily. Around that time in 2006 to about 2008, the annuity industry really started taking off. Back then, there were only a few annuities being offered by just a handful of companies. Since then, the industry has exploded. And one of the roles that I really still take a lot of ownership in is evaluating annuity companies and annuity contracts for our clients and what might be the best potential fit. So we look at things in terms of company ratings, what kind of service that annuity company provides, the benefits the contracts provide, just to get the best fit for clients.
Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Well, first of all, Trey, thank you so much for being on the radio show. This was a very, very good show, and thank you for all the research you did on it.
Yeah, happy to do it. Had fun.
Well, I did too. So, folks, you're listening to Worry-Free Retirement. We're on every week, but in the meantime, if you need to talk to us for any reason, if you're retired, retiring soon, maybe you've got an old 401k languishing out there, maybe you just received an inheritance or another large sum of money, and you want to work with somebody you can trust, somebody local that's been doing this a long time that'll shoot straight with you, fiduciaries, we are here to help. Just take advantage of talking to us free of charge. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call us anytime at 877-499-9255. Well, that's all the time we have for today, but you remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free and make it a good one.